Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to explore a really fascinating, meticulously documented subject from Islamic eschatology. We're actually going to look at how a 7th century text describes our modern, hyper-connected world with striking and honestly almost chilling precision. The source material we're diving into today outlines 30 specific, verifiable prophecies made by the Prophet Muhammad over 1,400 years ago, and it frames the very world you wake up in every single morning, not as just some random era of modernization, but as the fulfillment of a perfectly ordered plan. Okay, let's just dive right into this. I want you to take a second and just look around. Think about the smartphone in your hand, the endless 24-hour news cycles, the towering skyscrapers competing for the skyline. Think about the fracturing of our relationships and the absolute evaporation of trust in our leaders. According to the ancient texts we're analyzing today, none of this is an accident. So what if all of these massive societal shifts were actually predicted 14 centuries ago?
One of the most fascinating aspects of this text is the purely experiential nature of its very first prophecy. There's a specific hadith that states, "The hour will not come until time passes quickly. A year feels like a month feels like a week feels like a day." I mean, ask literally anyone alive today and they'll tell you time feels like it's accelerating. The days just blur together, right? This 1,400-year-old text predicted this universal sensation of time collapsing way before the internet or social media ever existed to distract us.
To help us really digest this massive list of signs, here's our roadmap for today. We'll start by understanding the prophetic framework. Then we'll move through the social, technological, and environmental shifts. After that, we'll assess our current place on the global timeline. And finally, look at how the text advises us to respond today.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, Understanding the Prophetic Framework, and specifically the difference between minor and major signs. So Islamic eschatological scholars divide the signs of the hour into two distinct categories. On one side, we have the major signs. These are the dramatic, unmistakable, apocalyptic events. You literally cannot miss them. But on the other side, and this is what we're really focusing on today, are the minor signs. These are much more gradual. They kind of sneak up on society and become so deeply embedded in the fabric of daily life that people living through them might just brush them off as, normal progress. And the texts argue that the sheer accumulation of these minor signs in our current era is completely unprecedented.
The text actually uses a brilliant metaphor to illustrate how these two categories connect. It's called the bead string analogy. The prophet compared the major signs to a string of beads. Once the string breaks, those beads fall rapidly, just one after another. But before that string snaps, the minor signs are what build the tension. They accumulate slowly at first, then faster and faster. It's a really powerful visual of how tension mounts right before a sudden cascade of final events. Which brings us to Section 2, Acceleration and Social Shifts, focusing on the breakdown of the social fabric.
A really crucial point here is how the text describes this profound social decay happening right alongside modern progress. The prophecies foretell trust completely evaporating from leadership, where utterly unqualified people are put in charge. They describe extended families and deep kinship ties just breaking down, leaving us feeling totally isolated. They even predicted that neighbors would become total strangers. I mean, think about it. How many of us live in these massive apartment buildings and actively avoid eye contact in the elevator? The texts also note a reversal of natural authority, where youth openly disrespect elders, and a terrifying rise in widespread senseless violence, where neither the killer nor the victim really knows why the violence occurred.
Now, scholars highlight a truly fascinating paradox here. The text predicted that the pen would spread, basically meaning that writing and mass literacy would become ubiquitous. And look around, we are living in an undeniable information explosion. Yet, simultaneously, the prophecy states that true, beneficial wisdom and moral knowledge would disappear. It's like we have endless data right in our pockets, but according to the source, there's a severe decline in deep understanding and moral clarity. Moving right along to Section 3, Wealth, Architecture, and Technology, from the desert to the skyline. This is perhaps the most visually striking sign of the entire group. The text literally states, "You will see the barefoot, naked, destitute shepherds competing in constructing tall buildings." Now, to put that into perspective, in the 7th century, a tall building was maybe 3 stories high. The idea of architectural one-upmanship was totally unimaginable back then. Yet, in what's basically the blink of an eye historically, we've watched the Arabian Peninsula completely transform. The descendants of Bedouin shepherds are now spending billions of dollars competing for the absolute tallest skyscrapers in cities like Dubai and Riyadh. It's just an incredibly precise historical fulfillment. And here we see yet another jarring paradox. The prophecies describe a world with interconnected global markets and overflowing wealth. Literally, so much wealth that finding someone to even accept charity would become difficult. But right alongside this massive abundance, the text describes an epidemic of despair. It foretells a time when life becomes so heavy and overwhelmingly difficult that a person will walk by a grave and genuinely wish they were in it. It's a stark, frankly devastating description of the modern loneliness epidemic, coexisting right alongside trillions of dollars in global markets. Next up is Section 4, Environmental and Demographic Changes. Shifting Earth and Populations. The environmental and demographic shifts predicted here are just as staggering. The text notes that earthquakes will measurably increase in frequency. It specifically predicts that the arid deserts of Arabia will return to being rivers, meadows, and gardens, which is something we are literally seeing today with massive irrigation and greening projects. Demographically, it foresees women dramatically outnumbering men due to ongoing conflicts, and that the Romans, which scholars generally interpret as Western civilization, will reach unprecedented global power and numbers. And while these global superpowers shift and demographics change, the Earth itself sort of rebels. The text notes this bizarre agricultural phenomenon where rain falls completely normally, but the soil yields nothing. That sounds eerily like today's headlines about soil degradation, doesn't it?
So, with all of this happening, we reach Section 5, Assessing the Global Timeline. Where exactly does the source material place us right now?
When scholars map all these signs out chronologically, they divide them into 3 distinct phases. Phase 1 consists of signs that have already passed, like the rise of early historical empires. Phase 2 contains signs that are ongoing and actively accelerating right now, and this is where the vast majority of our 30 signs live. The speeding up of time, the tall buildings, the social shifts. We are deep into Phase 2. Finally, Phase 3 contains signs that have yet to fully occur, such as the Euphrates River revealing a mountain of gold, which some scholars actually link to ongoing resource conflicts in the Middle East.
So the crucial point the scholars make here is that the sheer volume of these fulfilled minor signs gives immense credibility to the text. The minor signs aren't some separate story from the major signs. They're really just the early chapters of the exact same book. And if the early chapters are unfolding with this much precision, well, the source argues the final chapters are inevitable.
Let's finish up with Section 6, How to Respond Today. Given all this, how do we anchor ourselves in the present? The philosophical takeaway from all of this is incredibly counterintuitive. You might look at this societal collapse we just outlined and feel completely overwhelmed. But the source material explicitly states that these signs are meant to be a mercy and a reminder. They're a grounding spiritual tool designed to anchor you in your present reality. They are definitely not there to paralyze you with anxiety about the future. Because of that, the text prescribes very practical, grounding actions for anyone living through this dizzying era. It urges us to aggressively push back against the chaos. How? Reconnect with that extended family you've been ignoring. Seek out deep, beneficial knowledge instead of just doom scrolling on your phone. And beautifully, just say hello and spread peace, the salam, to absolute strangers, actively breaking down those modern walls of isolation. We've seen how a 7th century text mirrors our 21st century reality with shocking clarity, from our skylines all the way down to our social isolation. The warnings and the framework are laid out crystal clear in the source material. So as you go back to scrolling your feeds and walking through your hyper-connected cities today, I want to leave you with this final thought. The signs are clear. The question is, what will you do about what you see?